Hello world, we're now on the letter N through to P in my vinyl LP collection. So we're going to start out with Songs for Beginners by Graham Nash. That's been featured on my channel before. The Fear of Missing Out. This is by the new number 2. This is Danny Harrison, George Harrison's son. This is an absolutely brilliant album. Right, the new number 2 was a band that he sort of concocted up, and it's a bit like Portishead, something like that, but it's really good, very, very catchy. There are some tunes that I would even say their chord progressions and stuff are even based on George's. Here's a goodie, Nirvana, Bleach. Obviously Nirvana's second album, their sophomore album, as they might say. This is Nevermind. It's a horrible, horrible cover, but the album is really good and very, very well mastered. Here's Replicas by Gary Numan and Tubeway Army. Now, given that this is by Gary Numan and Tubeway Army, it's actually, the original Replicas album was credited to Tubeway Army, and Gary Numan as a name would not necessarily have been quite so well known at the time that he was making the album. So this is a reissue. See what label it's actually on. Yeah, it's Beggar's Banquet, but it's Beggar's Banquet Lowdown. Probably mid-80s, I would say that is. Here is an original, The Pleasure Principle by Gary Numan. So this one here has Down in the Park and Our Friends Electric on it as the two standout singles. This one here, its only real standout single is Cars. There are some pretty mainstream Gary Numan tracks on it, such as, for example, Complex and Me, M.E. which has been used in a lot of sampling, particularly of like some of the industrial bands and stuff like that. There's a lot of shadow coming through here. I set this up ages ago, had a long phone call, and then suddenly the sunshine got too bright. This is Telecon by Gary Numan. This is the 1980 album, and probably my favourite out of the 3 here that we've seen so far. Replicas would count as number 2, The Pleasure Principle as number 3. That might be a bit controversial because a lot of people like The Pleasure Principle, but I really rate this album. There are some really beautiful melodies on this album, and as well as that, if you look at some of the B-sides, there's a synth version of Troisième Nopédie by Eric Satie, which everybody will know the melody to. There's also things like a lovely piano version of Down in the Park that ended up on, I think, on the B-side of I Die, You Die or something like that. But also, 1980 was the year of the single We Are Glass, which, although it's not featured on this album, was recorded in the same sessions. And We Are Glass, I don't know, I can't really tell you for 2023, but certainly when I went to see Gary Numan many years ago now, the last time I went to see him was at the Brighton Dome or somewhere like that, and it would have been about 2012, something like that, and he was still performing We Are Glass as his encore piece. So yeah, there's a missing album now. The next album in my Gary Numan collection would have been Dance, which I love, but I've only got it on CD, right? And the CD mastering is early 2000s mastering, which isn't very good. It's too bright and sort of sibilant for the mood that it conveys, which is dark, it's nighttime, it's cafes and that sort of thing, and it should be far more subdued, and it's just a little bit too bright for that. Right, the next album then I have is I Assassin, which is the same image as Dance with the trilby hat and what have you, but this is 1982 we're looking at here. This has as its standout tracks Music for Chameleons and White Boys and Heroes. We Take Mystery to Bed wasn't a single, I don't think, but it is again a concert staple and is fantastic. And yeah, I like this album as well. So I could probably put these two albums on a par with each other, and also along with Dance. But as I say, that's on a CD somewhere. The following album from this was called Warriors, 1983. Again, I've got that on CD. I've had it on vinyl before. A lot of my vinyl is stored away somewhere in I know not where, but you'll find Warriors with that thing, as you'll find Dance with that sort of stored away vinylness that I just don't have anymore. All right, but one day in 1985, I was walking past Woolworths in Clacton, which actually still was a Woolworths in Clacton, and I just happened to glance through the door, and on the end of aisle was this album, which was Gary Numan Live White Noise. Now this is the Berserker albums tour, right? So after this you have Warriors, you also have Berserker in 1984, and at the end of 1984 he toured with the Berserker album, and this with the blue hair, this is the Berserker image. I loved it. I went to see it with my mate, and we had a great time seeing it, whatever. And when I saw this, it was $5.99. It's a double album, so a double album for $5.99 in 1984 wasn't all that bad in terms of pricing. And I had about £6 in my pocket, and I went and spent it on on this album, with a few coppers remaining, whatever. And so here it is. And yeah, listening back to it, I don't think it's all that great, but at the time it was fabulous and I loved it. All right, the gig itself probably was far better with the imagery and everything. He had the Telecon sort of pylons and the living ornaments lighting as well from the 79 tours, and he combined the two of them together and made this, and it was fabulous. So yeah, a good album, perhaps not as great as I remembered, but anybody listening to it would think that's fabulous. His next album was The Fury, which again I've got in storage somewhere, but I managed to find a picture disc on the Gary Numan website many years ago now, which is here. Right, you have to be really careful of them, and the fact that they've just put it in this plastic thing, I don't like it. That's The Fury. Not a bad album, but anything from The Fury beyond is very dubious up until, I suppose, the early noughties. When I say the early noughties, I mean probably about 2010. And this is the final Gary Numan album that I've got, which is Splinter, Songs from a Broken Mind, which I haven't heard for absolutely ages, and perhaps I ought to give it a listen to. It's just a little bit too scary for me. Right, this is Paolo Nutini's Caustic Love album. It's a double album in its vinyl iteration, but I'm sure it probably would just count as a single CD if you bought it as a CD. Don't buy it as a CD. It's absolutely fantastic as an album. I love it. Okay, it's only 3 sides as a double album. The fourth side, is just a blank groove, which is absolutely great for checking out your anti-skating as well. Laura Nyro, the first songs. This is my favourite of hers. It's from about 1966 and it's brilliant. CBS stereo, so it's going to be bright, it's going to be sibilant, but also very, very acoustically reverberant. But just a lovely album. This is called Christmas and the Beads of Sweat by Laura Nyro, and it's quite good, but not as good, I don't think, as the first songs. New York Tenderberry, which I think was very successful. And then when it was, they released the first songs. Alright, now I don't think it's going to come up in this pile, but Laura Nyro will not disappear from my record collection. Okay, you will find out about it later. This is Wrong Crowd by Tom Odell, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I love it. I loved it so much that at the time I bought the sheet music for it as well. Really beautiful. Mike Oldfield, Tubular Bells. This is obviously a reissue from the mid 2010s, I think. 2013 stereo remaster of 5 Miles Out by Mike Oldfield. The Pet Shop Boys, Please. Brilliant album. I think it was called Please because then they would have people going into the shop saying, can I have the Pet Shop Boys, please? It wasn't, there wasn't actually a song on it called Please, but you know, it did feature West End Girls, Opportunities, Let's Make Lots of Money. This is the Pet Shop Boys Disco, which is just remixes of this, Love Comes Quickly. West End Love Comes Quickly is on Please. That was the single I was trying to think of a minute ago. Suburbia, Opportunities, just remixes of whatever. They started a trend in the 80s of dance bands doing whole albums worth of remixes. You know, perhaps maybe sort of half a dozen songs, like Madonna's We Can Dance, I think it was called. The Pet Shop Boys Actually, which contains, you know, loads of their number ones. What Have I Done to Deserve This, which they did with Dusty Springfield. It's a Sin, Heart, just 3 singles there that are just amazing, fabulous. This was just before pop music, for me, started to die. It started to die in about 1988. And all we were left with was Introspective by the Pet Shop Boys, which again is remixes from the previous couple of years, a bit like disco, but has on it I Want a Dog, which is brilliant, and also It's Alright as well. You'll hear It's Alright if you look on my channel. You'll find me playing the It's Alright from that album. And finally, for the Pet Shop Boys, Behaviour, 1990. Please is brilliant, Actually is superb, but Behaviour is superb, 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 superb. And it just opens with Being Boring, which is brilliant. But, you know, I can't, you know, the word brilliant, it just doesn't say anything about it. But it's absolutely sublime. And the mood on here is a bit like Dance, really, by Gary Numan. Very, very sort of quiet cafes and very intimate and warm and cuddly. Obviously, you know how good Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon is here. This is not an original 1973 pressing, but it's not far after it. This is a reissue of Wish You Were Here by the Pink Floyd. You've seen this before, and I'll try and get rid of it as quickly as I can. I don't play it. I don't even know why it's on the shelf. It's absolutely knackered. Pinky and Pearcie's Hit Parade #2. In 1985, Duran Duran decided that it might be good for them to split into 2 projects and release things just, you know, for an album each, whatever. I think they'd just been so knackered and so fed up with one another from being on tour constantly for 3 years or something. They felt like the break might sort of do their creativity a lot of good and whatever. It didn't. And this is John Taylor and Andy Taylor's band, The Power Station. It's got Some Like It Hot on it, whatever, but it's just too banging crashy. So boom, 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 whatever. It's got a good version of Harvest for the World on it, but it's just relentless, absolutely relentless, and I don't like it. I much prefer Arcadia's So Red the Rose, which I think I've shown before, but yeah, don't like that one. Will Power's Dancing for Mental Health contains the song Kissing with Confidence, which Carly Simon did a lead vocal on. It's Lynn Goldsmith who did this album. She was a photographer, a famous rock and pop star photographer, whatever. She decided that she'd get all her mates, Sly and Robbie, the aforementioned Carly Simon, loads of other people involved in an album, Dancing for Mental Health. And it's actually, you know, it is like getting a therapy session, but, you know, it's also funny as well. I like it. Prefab Sprout, Steve McQueen. Prefab Sprout, From Langley Park to Memphis. This one is the one that contains The King of Rock and Roll, which is the sort of opening track. And then from then on you think, well, actually, what else is on here? Not sure that I like the rest of it, but certainly The King of Rock and Roll is fabulous, and I've put that on my channel years and years ago. Two Elvis Presley albums, Greatest Hits Volume 1 and Greatest Hits Volume 2. Great, even on these compilations, which will sort of be from the 70s and 80s probably. They're great. And then Heartbreak Hotel by Elvis Presley. Now we're into my Prince albums. Dirty Mind. If you're complaining about Sam Smith, remember that in 1980 Prince did it first and did it worse. There were songs on here like Sister, which even the backing musician said, I'll play along with it and I'll perform it, but I won't sing it. This is Controversy by Prince. This is probably my favourite Prince album. Absolutely love it. Again, there are lyric topics on here that are not for the faint-hearted. I didn't hear this in 1982 at the time. I think I heard it towards the end of 1985. I'd have been 17, and I would imagine that, you know, you wouldn't let anybody younger than that hear the content on this album. But, you know, even so, it's really good. It's just a real feel-good kind of dance groove on there. The record company were getting very jittery and nervous, and they asked Prince to please tone it down a bit. So here we have Prince 1999, which does at least contain, I mean, Little Red Corvette. I've done an analysis on Little Red Corvette on my channel, right? And it really doesn't do him any favours. It's very misogynistic, right? 1999 as a single is probably, you know, as clean as it gets, right? But there's also a song called Lady Cab Driver, which please don't let your children anywhere near. Again, this was the album that was supposed to be the record company saying, Prince, please give us some records that we can play on the radio. And he gave them that. It's a good album. This is the thing. It's great music. It's just a shame that some of the subject matter that he chose is really stuff that you just wouldn't want to choose for if you were writing songs yourself. At least I wouldn't. I have 2 copies of Purple Rain. This first one here is an original 1984. It's been in my collection since that time. And, you know, Prince, you know, Purple Rain was going to be a motion picture, whatever. Again, there are sort of, I suppose, at least 15, age 15 kind of moments in it. But it's nowhere near as bad as some of the stuff that's on 1999 or on Dirty Mind. This one has been played to death. It's also had, you know, I remember having this in my student house and whatever, and I'm saying, you know, if you go on to the end of side 1, you'll find that there's a backward message, and so we tried spinning the turntable around the other way, getting the needle to try and play it backwards and everything. Yeah, it's knackered. It's never been anywhere near my Rager, put it that way. This is a reissue, which is absolutely fine and no problems, and is actually a pretty good reproduction of the cover. I bought that in 2016, just after Prince died, right, because I knew that I needed a new copy of it. I've got it on CD as well, but the CD is nowhere near as lively and peppy as the album. we are getting to prints that you can actually play your parents. All right, I don't have Around the World in a Day. In fact, I haven't played Around the World in a Day for many, many, many years. Again, it's one of those that I used to have. All right, I was a bit disappointed in it when it first came out because it wasn't Purple Rain, but it's still a very, very good album, and it has Raspberry Beret and Paisley Park on it, which again, perfectly radio friendly songs. Prince and the Revolution Parade, this has Girls and Boys on it, has Kiss on it. You know, again, it's another film, so the although it's raunchy, it isn't just sort of downright sort of disgusting as, you know, perhaps some of the other subject matters were. You know, this again, it's something that you could, you know, if you're 14 or something, you could listen to that and, you know, probably be fine with it. Same with Sign of the Times. You know, nothing really too gruesome on here. Double album, brilliant album. Again, if I need a Prince album to play, this is going to be one of the first ones that I go to. It's great, okay? Obviously Purple Rain is brilliant. I don't want to rank them because it's not really a ranking thing, it's just really me showing my collection, but yeah. Love Sexy, another brilliant album. If you've got it on CD, it actually comes as one song because it's a bit like Sgt. Pepper in that all of the tracks are seggaed. However, there are some tracks on here which again go very, very near the knuckle and perhaps are best avoided for children, but for adults and whatever, I think it's fine. Yeah, it's a great album. All right, it's got a performance from Sheila E. on here, who also had her own single around about that time. But yeah, Dance On side 2, beginning of side 2, is her drumming and is great. The final album in this video is Batman by Prince, which again, perfectly tame and, fabulous album. All right. That is the end of my Prince. I don't really rank Prince from 1990 onwards. This is 1989. There was one with him just as the symbol, which had My Name is Prince on it, which is quite a good album. I've only ever had that on cassette, and I don't think I've got it anymore. As I say, this is the end of my N to P records, and I hope you like them. Alright, see you later. Bye-bye. Remember to like, subscribe, share if you dare, and if you want to, give a thanks down the bottom. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.